Welcome to the September 6th Blockhouse Mud meeting. We're going to go ahead and get started. I don't think we need to do the pledge. There's nobody's here. We don't have any citizens communication. Okay, just remind everyone to silence their phones. I want to put one thing up real quick before we have a special speaker tonight. I sent out a thing on board decorum. We all have a lot of paper here, myself included. I did not realize it. 3 residents told me when we're flipping through paperwork, it gets caught on the speakers. So do Tic Tacs. Robert said Tic
I don't have
Tacs.
them out right now. Roll those quiet.
Yeah.
There's my candy paper.
Yeah, so just, I mean, it's nothing we've had to think about before really, but those cameras are very sensitive, so let's just make sure that we kind of keep everything down so it's not picking up. Because when it hears it, then it moves the camera, and then it's moving over to you, Robert, and it's showing you chewing on your Tic Tacs. Okay. And I think the rest of it was in the email, so I think we're good there. I want to welcome Alvin to the Blockhouse meeting tonight. The Chief Appraiser from Williamson County, Alvin Langford. Thank you so much for joining us. Just want you to know we are live,
Sure.
so our residents can watch this as well as it's going to be recorded.
All right.
And our system, so if you want to stand by the podium, wherever you like, it will pick you up.
You know, it's gonna be hard to point from back here. I just realized, do y'all have a laser pointer by chance, or?
No.
Okay, well, I'll just point and kind of explain what.
Or you
I'm
can,
doing
if you want to
there.
come over here.
You want me to walk up?
Yeah, that's fine.
You can from there, I think they can pick up the sound.
Might be a little late to budget for a laser.
Actually,
No
actually my
problem.
briefcase, but it
I
has to
usually
be.
carry one in my backpack, but I don't have a backpack.
It's not sure what
All right, you can go ahead and flip to the first slide. So thank y'all for having me tonight. I was asked to look at 10 years of value for Blockhouse Creek and just kind of give you an idea of what taxable values have done as well as market values for both non-homesteaded properties and homesteaded properties. Just a reminder, the homesteaded properties you're going to look at are those that's their primary residence, and the non-homesteaded properties are those that are either rental homes or somebody who just does not live in that particular house. So looking at the average market value, which is what we're required to value at as an appraisal district, so that's what the home would sell for on January 1st. You can look back over the 10-year period and here and see a steady rise in values from 2014 through about 2020. And then the COVID effect happened, right? The realtors in the room know right after COVID, everybody started looking to upgrade. Everybody was cramped in their homes and wanted a bigger home, so everybody started to look, right? And you see the market value actually jump up in 2021. It was around 18% at the time. That was our record increase. Little did we know, the very next year, it would go up almost 50% on market value from 21 to 22. And you can see that in this large increase here. As you can see, both non-homesteaded and homesteaded properties are trending the same on market value because we're required to value them all at market value. I'm asked this all the time, do y'all ever come down in values? The answer is yes. If we're at market value as an appraisal district from one year to the next and the market drops on the sale prices that are out there, we will follow those. And you can see that from 22 to 23 on the market value. We actually, as a district, I believe we were the only appraisal district in the state of Texas that may have come down as much as we did. We came down about 12% because we were at market value in 22, we could actually follow the market back down in 23. So our market values dropped about 12% overall in the county and about the same here in Blockhouse Mud. Next slide. So different story that you're going to see here on taxable value. So to remind you, homesteaded properties, not only do you get the homestead exemption that in the past has been $40,000, now we're up to $100,000 homestead exemption, you also get to take advantage of a 10% cap on your taxable value. So you can see when market value on that prior slide and taxable value are the same, they kind of trend the same every year for both homesteaded and non-homesteaded properties. Until you have a year that the market value exceeds the 10% threshold of that cap. And you'll see that in this year here, the non-homesteaded properties actually went up more than 10%, while the homesteaded properties only went up 10%. Guess what happened when we went up almost 50%? Same thing, right? So non-homesteaded renters actually are seeing large increases in their rent because the market value, the taxes are going so far up on the taxable value. And so you can see as the homesteaded properties only went up 10%, they went up almost 50% in their value, and therefore their taxes, depending on what the tax rates were chosen that year, could have equaled 50% increase as well. And then taxable value on those actually came down for non-homesteaded properties. But guess what happens when you're homesteaded and the market comes down? You still go up 10% until those reach each other, right? As the market value declines and the taxable value increases, eventually they'll catch each other, and you'll see that trending that we saw back here, where they're about the same. But until that time, you're gonna see an increase in taxable value on those homesteaded properties until they reach the market value that's out there. You'll be able to see that more clearly on another slide. Next slide. All right, so this is market value again, back to market value for homesteaded and non-homesteaded properties. This is your total market value for the entire Blockhouse MUD. And you can see on most of your homes are homesteaded, right? Versus non-homesteaded. So you can see that market value increasing over time, that large increase here and then it coming back off. And on the same thing happens for the non-homesteaded, there's just much less of them. I think y'all are around 30% non-homesteaded. I have it on the last slide. Next slide. Taxable value. Here you're gonna see on these years, right? Taxable value on the homesteaded property starting to increase 10% per year, every year, right? These will continue, your total taxable value will continue to increase 10% per year until, as you saw on that last slide, as the market value comes down and equals the taxable value, you'll start to see them trend the same, so that your taxable value might actually decrease if the market continues to decline. But you see that in the non-homesteaded properties, it actually saw a decrease when the market value came down this year in Williamson County. But they saw a full increase of market value here on taxable value. They saw a full increase of taxable value from 22 to 23, but they were able to take advantage of the values, the market values coming down and their taxable values coming down with it. Next slide is the percentage of homestead. I thought this was interesting over time. In 2014, you had about 76%, around 75.25% of your homes in Blockhouse MUD were homesteaded. And it slowly declined down to about 72% of homes in Blockhouse Creek. Actually wrote down the number. I think it was, in 2014, there were 1,633 homesteaded properties and 535 non-homesteaded properties. And 2023, there were 1,560 homesteaded properties and only 609 non-homesteaded properties. So it's slowly increasing, about 80 homes roughly over that time of non-homestead.
And that's probably due to people putting them on sale and then the investors were purchasing them.
That's great. There's always a little bit of a gap there too. You know, there used to be. Now homesteads are prorated, but there used to be a gap in there from one year to the next, right? You might sell it and the homestead wouldn't apply to the following year. Mm-hmm. But now that there's a prorated homestead, it actually partially comes in the current year, right? So
is that, so is there a pandemic reason, or is that just a coincidence that the percentage of homes homesteaded spiked in 2021? Not spiked, but
went up. It's not a whole lot. I mean, it looks like a lot on percentage wise, but I think it was like about 10 or 15 homes difference. So it's not really in the numbers, you know, in the percentage. It looks more on the graph. It's always the scaling of a graph, right? You can make a graph look really interesting by scaling it differently. So, you have any questions for me on any of the data or anything else?
Yeah, how do you apply the values when it comes to the cap on over 65 and disabled?
The values are at market value, but the taxable value is obviously frozen at, it's the taxes paid that are frozen, not the taxable value are frozen, right? So the taxes paid are frozen in perpetuity until they sell the home or transfer it to another home, right? Okay. And so that is very handy if you're over 65, because with market values increasing the way that we have and taxable values also increasing by 10%, they get to pay about the same level of taxes until they get rid of the home.
Okay. Thank you.
And I guess one of the reasons I wanted to ask for this to be put together was because I think, you know, I actually did some rough math with the spreadsheet you sent. Mm-hmm. You know, we've seen it, looking at the range, like I would say it looks like as a share of our total tax base, when the period asked for back in like 2015, it looked like about a quarter of our tax base was non-homestead category A. Right. And that's now up to like 30%, right? Right. It's kind of what you're seeing here, the inverse of that. And, right? I think the thing I want to note though is, you know, going forward now, you know, those non-homestead houses have a 20% cap as well, at least for the next 3 years. Yeah, that's correct. Anything under half a million, or excuse me, 5 million now has that, so. And that would include other properties, right? Like, yeah, as long as they're 5. Commercial, basically every property except for business personal property will have that 20% cap now. Until you get over a 5 million range, and even then it changes over time based on the increase in, was it the CPI? I can't remember what it was. It's adjusted, yeah, CPI. It's adjusted based off CPI.
So I do have another question. So the majority of the values that increased was the land cost. I mean, so what was kind of the rhyme or reason? I know land is expensive because we're in a fully blown.
So when you're in a fully built-out neighborhood like Blockhouse, it's usually a percentage of the overall value that we apply to the land. Obviously, you can't sell the land without the house, or the house without the land, they're one component, right? And so, but over time, we need to adjust the land to equal properties surrounding you. So if you have another neighborhood that's built, outside of your area here, if we still had you on 2,000 prices at $20,000 a lot, and they're at $120,000 a lot, that's gonna look really inequitable. So we actually will adjust based on time. It's usually about 20% of the overall value is applied to land, but that's give or take. It depends on the area.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess one last comment, that's all right, is, also, I think the one thing to note too is, that, I mean, look at the number you sent, I would think it'd be fair to say that you had very little overall appreciation or taxable from this year to last year, right?
Yeah.
But almost all of that is driven by deferred appraisal cap, right? Essentially, because the market and taxable, the other houses is down, the market overall is down.
Right.
So that's all driven by deferred appreciation. And so unless the market starts picking back up, then you'll run out of that deferred appreciation.
Yeah, that's exactly
In
right.
a year or two, probably.
The 20% cap is interesting too, because as I said before, the largest increase we'd ever seen for residential was about 18% until 22, right? So that 20% cap probably isn't gonna be reached on residential properties very often. I mean, knock on wood, right? I don't know if we wanna see another year like we had in 22, it was crazy, so. But, on commercial properties, on the other hand, there is more fluctuation in value, but understanding you only had like one daycare, I think Cecilia had said, in the whole,
We got some ag in the front, if it were converted out.
Right,
It'd be covered by the cap.
We only have a
So-
little bit of it though.
You only have what?
We have just a portion of it.
Oh,
not
just a
all of
portion.
it.
Yeah.
Good, okay, directors, Director Young, Johnson?
It was very useful, thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
Definitely.
One other follow-up, and I think, and probably most of the board do understand this, but you and I had that conversation. The school is not taxed, so that is basically sitting there with no value to the.
That's
district at
correct,
all.
it's exemption, it's on full exemption, so as are most schools, I mean, unless it's a private school or something like that, most of them are exempt.
Okay.
It'd be nice to have that value.
Would be very, very nice.
But it's
Yeah.
not there.
Well, this is very helpful. Al.
Very.
Thank you for taking the time out.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
coming, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna get to dinner then.
All right.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Good to see you.
have a good evening.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and close out the meeting and start the public hearing. Is that?
Yeah, we can go ahead and do that. So, board members, tax code requires that you undertake a public hearing. First time for a couple of you guys. So basically what it is an opportunity when you're required to undertake a public hearing, not just tax stuff, there's other stuff in various codes that require public hearing. It's just a guaranteed citizens communication within the context of a meeting. So you have your citizens communication at the beginning of the meeting. If a citizen wanted to come in and talk at the beginning, and then during the hearing, they could do that. So it's a guaranteed opportunity to talk about that particular topic. So with all that said, we can go ahead and open up the public hearing.
Okay, we're gonna open up the public hearing. And let's go ahead and do number 5, agenda item number 5.
So just to show, we'll show that the public hearing was open at 6:44 and promptly closed with no comment.
There was no citizen communication.
Yeah.
Yes, and in case there are any citizens watching live, we are not taking citizens communication at this time via the OWL system. We hope to do that in the coming months, but we need to obviously work through some of the issues with it. So if anybody wanted to speak, they needed to be here in public as normal. So, okay, all right, that's closed. Now we're gonna go ahead and go on to number 5. Let's go ahead and go into the budget. I know we have a couple more edits on it. Let's, Taylor, you wanna go ahead and take the lead?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I handed out 2 separate copies. The differences between these 2 copies is the tax rate. So at the last board meeting, I was asked to prepare a budget with the parity tax rate as well. And so you'll have a copy of the budget with the tax rate, the total tax rate of 0.5915, which is the parity budget. If you look on the very last page of the budget is where you'll find the tax rate. And that's how you can determine if it's the parity rate. It'll be right here in this first box. So
I
the
don't think I
parity
have
rate-
that one.
Okay, I can give you. I have a bunch of copies.
You need parity?
Parity,
That's okay.
thank you. Okay,
So you should have 2, one with the parity rate and then one with the tax rate of 0.611 for these years.
And does this include Director Johnson's, edits?
So I did not include in the budget the edits. I included some notes on the side of my copy so that we can all talk about it, but I did not include them since they
Okay,
have.
do we
not
wanna
been-
start there? Dr.
Sure,
Johnson?
and just to be clear, my edits were just what we talked about last time. So nothing new.
The ones I concurred with.
My shorthand didn't include what they actually were, it just had the account numbers on them. But it's about 20,000 less of deficit, so, I noted 16,738.
Like 16,738.
Legal
page
fees
3.
for restrictive covenants.
Mhm.
Just to match, I took 5,000 just to kind of get a little closer to what it was this year.
So I
So-
also added in another column since the last draft that y'all saw, which is the over/under column as well. So I know that was
Oh,
also
yes.
kind of a discussion at the last meeting as well. So that column has been added.
Thank you,
Dr.
Taylor.
Johnson, you saying to drop that, or change it to 15,000?
No, I only had it going, my note is at least a $5,000 reduction to 25, but we could do 20 as well. Just to bring it a little bit more into line with what it was this year.
Well, I guess the thing about our subcommittee, I mean, do we wanna just simply budget what's spent this year, and then if you have pending major litigation, we need to ask for a budget amendment? Because the money, the money is sitting unexpended in restricted covenants, right? And we're not using it, it doesn't do the neighborhood any good, we're collecting it as taxes, it's not going in reserve, it's not going to anything else.
Fair enough. I'm fine with that.
I mean, because I would think if we have major litigation, we're gonna have to come to the board for approval anyway to file suit,
Right.
and
Oh, so that's what it actually essentially is, it's already at 16,000.
yeah, but well, you're talking making it 25 or 20, so I was saying like,
My apologies, yeah, I was looking at that.
So are you bringing it down or bringing it?
No.
I think Taylor,
it's
the
already
parity
there.
budget has
That's
it.
what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
My mistake. The next one I had was 16,703. And this one, I believe, is legal fees, which the document that, I'm drowning in paper over here. The document that Taylor sent out today was very useful. I thought I lost it. Just kind of showing, Sean, you know, we had talked about those fees, and I didn't know, the sent form kind of showed the breakdown in what was this year in terms of, I don't know that we want to touch general, but just in terms of minutes and special meetings. I don't know what we think about that. I mean, I don't know if we're anticipating fewer special meetings this year than we did last year, or you said we were saving time on the minutes. I don't know
Absolutely.
if you want to guess at quantifying that. It was 12,000, you sent me this current year's, right?
I did, yeah.
So it was,
1,000 a month, right?
it's very slightly over, but yeah.
I think you could probably plug even a little bit north of there, so I think you could easily 13.5, I think, probably.
It's at,
It's at 235.
So take out 13.5. I think it's-
oh, I'm sorry, okay. You were looking at it holistically, that's much better. I'm just looking at the breakdown,
Can I piggyback on that real quick, Director Johnson?
please.
In addition to under legal fees, I was wondering, if you look at the invoice from Armbrust & Brown, there is a fee, and I did ask Denise to, for the actual, to quantify the number, and I don't know what it is yet, but, to have the hard copies, to have it couriered here and to have it prepared, and I know you guys are attached to them, and that's, you guys can keep them if you want, but that is another area that we could, save money and not have those sent over or prepared.
Did you get a number?
I didn't get a number yet, and I was trying to look through the, your invoice, and I ended up just emailing her. I know the GM said she'd be okay not having one sent over, so it'd be down to the two of you, but that is a fee that we pay every month.
Does it have to be couriered?
No?
I mean, given if the time, because this is one who gets it, like, getting it before the meeting is, like, I guess, I know couriering is not cheap, right? So I was like, that's probably the biggest cost of putting this together, I'd assume, is the ferrying it super fast, like, if there's like a cheaper way to send it. I still prefer having a hard copy to write on.
Can't we send to FedEx and then have them print it out, and one of you guys that like having the copies pick it up?
Yeah, I'm fine with some other option, but so.
Sure, and there are different ways. We send some of them out standard mail. That hasn't gone too well recently with US Postal Service. But we can do second day, I have some districts I bring hard copies with me. So if you want to look at, an electronic copy in advance of the meeting, and then I could show up and you could follow along. But really, it's your preference, and certainly we will support you in whatever way you want.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to make an adjustment to the budget today, but could we tailor, and could we make that one as definitely if you could have Denise cost out options for us?
Sure.
Next means we make it, and the next time we adjust the budget, we can make that adjustment downwards.
Yeah.
Because definitely want to look at getting a cheaper, at least from my end.
I still want a hard copy, just because I read it and write notes on it, so.
Okay, but at least for me, I would like to have it, I tend to read it, I make notes in the meeting, right? And, so I like having it, but at the same time, like I know sometimes they're quartering it and it's getting there like, several days, which is nice, but given, I expect the cost of couriering, right?
I think it's about 80 plus.
Yeah, whereas like it goes second day and you spend like 15, like it would be just fine for, at least for me personally, to save us some money. So.
But there is also, just so I'm telling you, there is a cost to having it prepared and printed, there is an admin cost with that. So if down the road, if you guys decide that you want to do some more savings, that's another place that we could do it, so.
So if everyone's good with Sean's 13.5 number, then Lisa, the 16,703 where you are should be 221,500
Wait,
income,
so 221, okay,
500 instead of 235.
okay, she's making those changes too.
Yeah, this is right.
So it's,
The next, sorry.
I didn't change the other one that y'all did though.
Oh, my apologies. I'm sorry. I thought that's what you were doing.
No.
I-
What was the other one?
You can send it back if that's.
16,738
My mistake.
restrictive covenants.
What are we going at?
We, 16,738, we go up a little bit.
Just,
Actually, should
it was,
Column, yeah, we taking that, we thought about taking that to 16, since we didn't spend more than that this year, and if we were to spend more, we'd have to get board approval anyway to go forward in the suit.
the next one I had was 16,714, which is a little bit down, which is currently 8,000 for printing and office supplies. I had us discussing that, putting it at 6,000, so a 2,000 reduction. These aren't all huge, of course, but
And does that include, the newsletter?
No.
Okay. When he's done, I'll go back.
the next,
so what does that include? The printing and office supply for $6,000?
I can pull it up, 16714, right?
yes,
Oh, she can answer that.
I think she just answered an email.
Yeah, that's gonna be all of your printing for all of your consultants. It will have, again, it's printing and office supplies, so any sort of office supplies that we have to order for the Walker House, meeting supplies.
So what are we averaging on the Walker House supplies? Maybe since we kind of stocked it well, Lisa, do you think that we need to?
It should be minimum. We don't spend that much here. We buy a few pens and some paper and every now and then.
And it was probably a little bit higher last year just because it was kind of stocking everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So do you think we can do that on 6 or 5,000?
we said 6 last time, but if we think we can do it at 5.
I'll defer to Lisa, do you?
Sure.
Okay.
And so take that to 5.
16, I lost it. 1671.
And again, that's where your printing too for your board packets is gonna be as well, so any sort of savings that we can generate there will also come from line.
5,000.
And I guess one other, I don't know, just back to the board packet comments, we can discuss more there. I guess one thing too is like, it's obviously much more helpful to have the big packets of the ones made, but some of these small ones like this one, where they're,
We don't need.
that may be something else to discuss too, maybe we can only do for regular meetings or something.
Yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
David.
For the
But-
board meetings, okay.
Yeah, like just, because there's some definitely, like these small meetings, like we can get our own stuff, it's not that
Well, I
hard, they're
know.
bringing it to us, but.
Printing most of the stuff that was sent, because I got it at the last minute today, I was like, well, and then it was in
Okay.
here, and the consultants are bringing a lot of the
Right.
updates, so.
Whereas like for the regular meetings, we're getting the large report from.
Good.
So we can discuss that further, but just throwing that out there, something to
Okay.
discuss with
Sure.
Denise, yeah.
Okay.
So 17,907 was the next one I had. Walker House improvements and rehab.
Like 17?
907.
Yes, it's 4 or 5 up from the bottom.
Pretty sure we don't have
I had
it.
us zeroing that out.
We did, we're zeroing that, we didn't need anything for that.
Okay,
And then the last one I had was back on 16605, and I wrote down plus 100,000.
the
604?
pool,
Yes, the pool maintenance. I don't know if it's 100,000 added to this number though.
Yes, it should be 175 in total.
yeah, which it's on, I guess I'm looking at the proposed.
That's right, the 175 is right.
5
Okay.
5, okay.
That's
pool
probably,
maintenance.
And you had it at 175?
I do, that must be right.
yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I have a couple of, if you're done.
I'm done.
Okay, 16740 seminar expense, 7,000, I think we can make that 0.
16740.
40.
Mm-hmm.
Is,
So what is that? What is that?
Seminar is case.
Yeah, that'll
So
be
y'all
all
is gonna do the case?
conferences, and if there was interest in AWBD, that would also fall under there.
Then if we're gonna do that, we don't need to zero that out.
Well, I don't think it's gonna be 7,000, because if we're gonna do AWBD, aren't we gonna do local? We're gonna do Dallas or Austin or San Antonio. I don't think we need to,
I'll say me personally, just from a personal matter, nothing against these organizations, I don't plan to attend the faraway ones, the wife and the kids and the job and my responsibilities here, like, if I'm spending a weekend working on one stuff, I'm probably gonna be going through paperwork or doing other stuff here, not.
and this is just 1 year.
Not a knock on it.
I just, I think it's worth maybe this year saying we're not gonna do it, we can do local ones.
what's ADB?
It's Austin,
AW?
Association of Water Board Directors,
Right.
it's Texas-wide.
How, I realize there's no way to answer this off the spot, but how much is that to go to for all of us, assuming all of us wanted to go?
Yeah, so it would be obviously like your hotel costs, your registration costs, so it'd probably be 1,000.
But they're a lot closer, they're not in
Yeah.
South
Sure,
Padre.
sure.
You can, I think there's
The
one in
next
San
one's in
Antonio,
Dallas, I
Dallas,
think.
the sometimes they're in Austin,
Right.
but.
So there's 2 parts to that as well, whereas Case, it was just the conference where there weren't a lot of resources online, whereas AWB, they have quite a few more resources online and tutorials and different things like that, so we can still maintain a membership with them, but not do a big trip and
Yeah,
staying.
Lisa, or I'm sorry, I do this all the time, Taylor attended the one in July, and their entire program was online, all the PowerPoints, all their information. So I think for 1 year, if we're really trying to tighten the budget, it may be a year that we say we're not gonna go.
Well, not go, but we're still gonna maintain the membership.
Yeah, I
and-
think
and
it's good to
still-
retain the membership.
Is the membership
It's a
in
good
this line
resource.
item?
Let me
No.
confirm, your registration would be, but your membership should not.
I think it is important to realize that the last leadership probably wasn't the best quality, because they've
In
had
case?
some very good case conferences, yes. Because they're very local to the Austin
I-
market
I
versus
gotcha.
the last one.
But especially since it's an Austin organization, it doesn't make a lot of sense for all five different vehicles taking mileage expenses to, all the way down to South Padre. And
I understand that, but I'm telling you that it is a local organization, and the new leadership is gonna be Trent Rush, so you could see a whole improvement. I've seen some very good value in it.
And I've
if
gone
we-
to several of the conferences, and I think it's been hit or miss. Mindy wasn't always the chair,
Right.
when I was attending it, so, my suggestion is that we zero it out for this year.
What if-
Maybe-
I'm
I
sorry,
recommend that we leave at least $3,000 in there.
I was gonna say, what registration's not in there?
It's very minimal, it's like $700.
Yeah.
I mean, if the 3 of you are gonna go to conferences, you're not gonna go.
I'm not going.
I'm not going to Padre, but the one in Dallas in January, I was considering going to. Maybe we leave 3 or 4 and just kind of see.
Let's cut it in half.
Okay.
And, if we don't spend it this year, right, then,
Because I mean, the legislature sessions are here. I went and attended it for AWBD this last year, and it was very good.
Yeah, again, I think there's gonna be some good local options, that we don't have to go out of town and get hotel rooms and such. Okay, my other one was 16743, I was gonna take down to 10K, but, I was kind of talked out of it. So I just, something for a discussion later, as far as covenants and how we're handling those. So that's on pause. 16723, travel expense, you said that was what did you say that was?
That's gonna be like your consultants coming to board meetings, all mileage,
So we
like
pay
my
you
mileage
to
is
come
in
to the board
there.
meeting?
Yep, Sean's mileage.
Okay, I think that, we can start looking at that a little bit with the L system. I mean, definitely Sean's gonna have to be here for some of them, but, you know,
Maybe in the past, our firm charge mileage, I don't,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll need to figure out what that
let's,
really
let's
is.
take it.
And just from a practical matter for y'all, like obviously if there's meetings, you don't have to have you in person, but you can simply watch, saves you all the time, right?
Mhm.
To the extent we can do that for y'all, and that's true for David Gray or any of our other consultants, if we don't have any.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
we don't charge mileage.
Yeah, I was gonna say, not on.
We charge
charge mileage.
Oh, it's you!
I charge mileage, yes, I do, and I will correct myself, Sean, you do not have mileage on your
I
bill.
wasn't, I trust
yep.
you more than me.
No, you're good,
Sean does
and
not have it.
the other mileage too that's in there is from Case.
Okay, alright, well then that will definitely go down then. Okay, and then,
So can we go back to one thing, or
Yeah.
you mentioned about, where was it, restrictive covenants, right?
Mhm.
You went, where was it, hold on.
Fourth from the bottom.
Yeah,
seven
so,
forty-three.
so you talked about you want to cut it down, but I guess the question I was gonna ask is, we're about to spend just over 30,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mark.
ways we couldn't take that down to like say 33 or 31 or something, I mean,
Let's
if
do
there's a
31.
solid reason, and I think to your point, we do have this, in the coming year, I hope we can have a discussion about, Dave Rick and I was gonna talk a little bit, we're not ready to bring it to full board, we've talked some about, there's definitely a need to engage in changing how we do that.
Yeah,
31.
31, yeah, and I know one of the big things that has increased in that is the ACC requests, where before they were paying like $25 for it or something, now it's like $125, so. Okay, and then my last one is 16706, which is engineering fees. And it's at 25.
Actually, it's 30.
I'm looking
I'm
at
just looking at
the
the
proposed.
The proposal between this current year's budget is 30, and then we're gonna look like we're gonna expend a hair
Yeah.
over 22.
So I was just gonna move that to 22, so that's just a $3,000 savings, but.
That's a-
Yeah.
Did I say 723?
You said,
Travel, okay, I did travel.
did.
And 40 seminar, I did that. Okay, those were, my edits. So what's our number now?
And I've got one as well.
Oh, good, okay.
The BMX park, I don't see that we need to do any work on that at all, so I would just take that and zero it out and zero, because it's just a natural park, it's been rebuilt.
It's actually, a mess. The rebuilt was not done well. And, but it's only $3,000.
Yeah,
And I think we're gonna have a lot of volunteer work we've been looking at, the amenities. So, I would keep that in there because actually there are some safety issues with it, the rebuild they did last year.
so what is it that's really concerning?
You'll spend that just in the skid steer alone and
Well,
the
what's the
driver
issue?
for it.
let's get some bikes and then you try
Because I
and
see
figure
the
out
bikes.
but it doesn't make any sense. There's no rhyme or reason. None of the turns go into the other turns. It's just,
So it's been rebuilt.
it's a wreck.
Not yet.
It's halfway through the rebuild and it doesn't make any sense, on where the things are, where they're going and there's,
But I thought that we approved a volunteer that was actually a bike person.
He didn't do it.
He didn't,
Did
no,
design.
he didn't do it. We have another person that's, very familiar with those
Because I
types of
thought he
parks.
was too.
I wasn't involved in it, that was a Steve Byron project, but, we've gone over there and toured it, and it's a mess, and it does need a little bit of love, not a lot, but it needs some.
Yeah,
I'd
let's
like
just keep
to,
it to a bare minimum.
I'd like to get a skid steer, like, get some planning going on, get a skid steer out there for a day, and then get to volunteer maintenance.
Let's get a plan before we get a skid steer.
Well, we actually talked about this in our meeting today, when you get a skid steer, you do it for a full week. And so there's some stuff we can do at the disc golf course, maybe another park and over here. So we're not just getting it for one thing,
Okay.
we're gonna have a plan and do
What
it.
I've asked is that when we do get a skid steer, we don't get it for one day, let's pile up the different things that need
Yeah.
the skid steer. Then we'll knock it all out in a 7-day period or 5-day period, depending on what the
Yeah.
week is.
Can y'all bring that plan to the board?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely,
of
absolutely,
course.
that would be.
Okay,
That's the damage.
So,
We're at
Oh, sorry.
on the
117.
lifeguards, I mean, is that still, I mean, we cut back a lot of hours, and I'm not sure what happened there, but what
Did we
was
cut
that?
back on hours? I thought we
The
kept.
Patrick Pool is literally closed on the weekends.
Yeah.
Or the website says it's every other weekend closed, and it's got an incorrect posting.
This number is based off of what we think we need for this, and we have a meeting with Mark next week, next Tuesday,
Yes.
to talk about, because his contract is through September, so.
Okay.
I think there was some confusion on social media because we started opening the pools a little bit later, but keeping them open later. And some residents said that they're closing them, more often, but we added hours on the end of it. And that had to
Well, the website
coincide.
actually says differently then, so we need to get that corrected.
And I'm working
And I'm
with,
getting some comments about it, and I'm
I
going, I
gotcha.
had no idea that we.
Yeah, I got
closed
some
it.
comments too, but then when I went out there, the comments weren't correct, so,
Well, when I went to
and-
the website, it says that it was closed this
that
weekend.
schedule was very difficult to interpret. So coming season, I've committed with Lisa, we're gonna work on getting something that is easy to read and understandable and not needing a whole matrix and stuff like that,
Yeah,
so.
and I guess my point was this, so if we're cutting hours, which I guess we're not, but it's just posted incorrectly, so, what, is it 480? I mean, do we really need 480?
yes, we do.
Okay, so are we gonna increase hours or keep them level same?
I don't think you can really compare it to this past year, because we had so many changes with the company leaving, with the, that they didn't even show up, and then with COVID. So we are gonna go back and look at what a real normal year was. And, this is about what we usually would do, the hours we normally keep open, this is what we need to cover
So-
that.
Was there, I mean, cause that's, the last one, the budget was we spent 326, but it was at 445, and now it's at 480, so I'm just kind of trying to figure out, is there, just put it back to 445?
Then we would definitely be cutting hours.
Okay, maybe, are we looking at how many swimmers are actually attending?
We do,
and
look
things
at
like
that, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I just was curious about it.
Yeah, no, it's good questions. Director
And I think for
Schreiber.
the record, like, how much, do we recall roughly how much we had a contract with Lifeguard for hire, and our recollection is we did not ultimately pay them the full amount they billed us under that contract,
Mhm.
but I can't recall what the discount was.
It was like $7,700.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay, so I mean, that's part of this too, is we're under budget because.
And to
essentially
be,
didn't
to
pay
be
them.
clear for everybody that's just listening in, what we didn't pay them was for services we didn't get. It wasn't that we shorted them, but we agreed on a number and moved forward.
And it'd be good to look at the hours anyway, only because I know sometimes in September and April, it feels a little wonky that the pool's not open on the
Yes.
weekend.
Yes.
When it's more than warm enough, it's 100 degrees.
That's what I kept
Yeah.
hearing everybody, why is it closed?
Right,
Yeah.
so I think that would be good anyway.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah, as
good.
long as we,
Anybody have any other edits to this?
so see where we're at.
We're at 117,000 in the hole.
Okay.
So,
Is that with the regular 0.611? So you're at -1, what was it?
117,420, it's up on the board as well. They sent out.
So you dropped the 30-something thousand? Okay,
Yeah,
So
I was
the-
at 158 previously.
the amount,
so my question is this, if we were to, we have 12 months reserve, right? And what is that, $5 million, 5.9 million? Is that correct?
Right.
In reserves?
That's correct.
So if you were to take the 117 out of those reserves, what would it do to our vulnerability?
I think because it's close enough that y'all would be fine with that.
Yeah.
Assuming we're doing the bonds in 2024, so.
Because I don't think we can trim it much more, so if it's okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and make a motion that we adopt it at this rate. I'm just asking for the motion right now. And take the deficit out of the 12-month reserve of 5.9,065,305.46.
Do I have a second? I'll second for discussion.
so I need to catch up.
Yes.
So you said 5.9, but that's the cash balance, so now I'm caught up on that.
Yes.
We were just talking about 117 in reserves for the parity rate.
No,
Or
so
no.
That was
That's the
just the
max
regular
rate.
one.
the
Okay.
max tax rate.
See, 'cause I was actually doing math, I was working backwards on my own, not saying your math is wrong, but like, kind of track, like, we have, you know, a deficit on the parity rate of 173,646, I was like, no, like, okay, we add back 13,500, like, all the different things we added back, I came out that we still have a deficit on that one of 148,646 roughly. Is my math on the parity rate side correct?
So the parity rate would be the 0.5915,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So if I plug that into your budget, I show a deficit of 247,000.
On the, maybe on,
247 deficit.
but on, what's this 178 figure on the budget?
Don't even look at that because that's just your over/under. That means
Okay.
nothing.
So,
Okay.
If you use
Oh,
those
it's a
changes that
946.
we just did on the parity example, it would be 247 what?
Negative 247,196.
Okay, ouch. That's a lot.
so. What? Is that comparable number to that 946 on here? This is from last week.
What 946?
So I'm trying to figure out what the deficit is for the parity rate, which you just told me.
Yep.
I'm just trying to find that number. Is that number
You
on
would
here?
not
We
find
would not
anything.
have had it because she did not have a parity budget
Okay,
last
This is
time.
the first time you're seeing that parity budget.
right.
So Lisa, if you scroll to the top for me, I can have you plug it in and show you all where. So in that little box on the right, if you type in under M&O, under column J,
Colin J.
and then go down just a little bit, right there, that one, it's the
2 point?
0.2686
0.6.
is the parity, what your M&O.
686?
Is that right?
0.2686, yeah. And if you scroll all the way down, it'll show you what that looks like.
Oh, wow.
So 247? So if 247 is half a month of expenses, is that right? Right, roughly, 470. It's, a month of expenses is 471. Am I reading that right?
Sorry, one
That's
month of expenses, yes, the 471 is just literally taking your total expenses divided by budget.
Right.
Yep,
Okay, so 471, so we'd be basically, if we were gonna do this plan, we'd be taking half a month of reserves, going from 12.64 to 12.1 and change. I'm using rounded math, so I can do it in my head, but we'd be going down to just over over a year of reserve.
right.
So what is the actual benefit, again, of parity? I mean, because that's 247 versus 117. I mean,
I think also, Lauren, if you could explain again the position that they may be in next year if they go to parity.
that's my big concern.
That is a concern of mine as well. Your tax rate.
So. It's not the best idea to try to go into market showing not only a deficit budget, but potentially additional deficit budgets, because then no matter what your reserve, they're looking at the fact that you're having to dip into those consistently in order to fund your expenses. So it negates the positive of the reserve, because then they're looking at a possible downgrade in rating, because the district on paper, which is all they're gonna look at, is not able to adequately meet its expenses. So that is something to keep in mind when selling bonds, because y'all have a really good rating now of A1. And I would just hate to see it downgraded, because even though, say, an A2 is still good or an A3 is still good, what others are looking at is, well, why'd they get downgraded? What's happened in this district where they went from A1 and now they've had to go down? And that potentially lessens the number of potential purchasers. That may give insurance companies pause on having insurance on the bonds. Those are just things to keep in mind.
Can I ask a question, Lauren? Given that all of our value growth this year was essentially, and I ran the number, roughly around the numbers, the tax value of homes with homestead exemptions was up 6% this year. The market value of homes without homestead exemptions was down 8.72, which nets out, based on the basis what Alvin sent, to us having just under a 1% overall increase in taxable. If the market continues to decline next year, I think there's a real chance that if we see, say, a similar level of market decline, another 10%, we might be 0 for sure, or negative on taxable value growth. I guess, what would you advise issuing bonds until if we have negative value growth in a year? I mean, we need to make sure we're in a place where we need to have positive or stable value growth for issuing bonds into it, right? We don't issue bonds into a place where we're gonna put you up a declining base and then do that rate off of, right? Like, we need to make sure that if we issue bonds, we're not committing ourselves to increases in rate because values are falling for our tax rate for paying those bonds, seeing as you have a 3.5% limit and the bonds fall into that limit.
What, just so I understand, what rate increase are you thinking of?
That if issuing new bonds will lead to us increasing our tax rate, right?
Debt service portion of your tax rate, your overall tax rate, because of the way the developed district at the 3.5% goes. If things were to stay the same and you could keep the same overall tax rate as this year, then you're still gonna have less operation and maintenance because your debt service portion of the tax rate would go up. Your fire, let's say it's remains static next year, then you're still decreasing the O&M portion of your tax rate. If you were to stay exactly where you are at a parity rate, per se, or even at the max rate, that would be pretty much where it would stay stagnant. But because with bonds, you're gonna have a higher portion of the debt service portion of that total tax rate, that O&M portion, which is what you all fund your expenses and budget with, would decrease.
And it would still show up on the notice, right, as an increase, right? Increase, because the way our notices work is the notice covers fire, debt, and M&O taxes on the average house, right? That once you issue the bonds, it'll show up if it results in a tax burden increase as an increase, right, above parity.
So, your notice of public hearing shows just total tax rate. It does not go into debt service portion, O&M,
Well,
fire.
Well, I mean, my point is, Lauren, is, I guess I'm saying is that if you keep the M&O revenue static, right, and you issue new bonds on top of it, and let's assume for argument's sake, the fire rate is static, because of the increase in revenue, it will still show up next year as being some percent increase in taxes on the average home in the notices. Because currently, in our current one, we're noticed at 3.44, and if you break down and do the math, our M&O rate is down, our M&O revenue is down, but the money to be paid for the bonds, the bond rate's up a tick, the fire rate's up. So I guess what I'm getting to is, like, next year, if we even tried to hold the line of the budget still, we're still looking at, if we issue bonds, it will show up as we are raising taxes in the notice, because it raises the total tax rate, unless values go up, right? If values are flat, we're increasing our revenue.
So if I'm understanding your question correctly,
Mhm.
we're basing all of this off of a very minimal increase or no increase in taxable home value, correct?
Mhm.
We are assuming same total tax rate, correct?
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just
no,
asking.
we're reviewing the example, yes, let's keep, yeah,
Yes,
sorry.
so if you have essentially the same taxable home value, and you have essentially, where we're gonna, for this purpose, say we have the same tax rate, so home value stayed static, tax rates, total tax rate stayed static, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so you really wouldn't see an increase on the bill, because at that point, you are actually comparing the one apple to its twin, because you're dealing with the same numbers, essentially. Why you would see a decrease in your operation and maintenance is because if your fire rate stays static at the 1194, correct? So that's the one piece of your total tax rate. Your debt service tax rate is gonna go, and I did put this in your packets because you all have asked, it would go from that 2035 up to 2210, just based on assuming a 4.25% interest rate, you issue the bonds next year, okay? So now your debt service portion of your total tax rate has gone up. So if we're dealing with the same number, then the O&M rate is going down because your debt service is eating up more of what was available after the fire tax. So
That's exactly what, that's what I was trying to illustrate, because that's what happened to us a little bit this year. And so that's what I'm trying to illustrate a little bit, when we're talking about this, like for next year is, taking that example and changing it slightly is, let's keep the home values the same. Let's make sure, let's change the O&M rate to be whatever it needs to be to bring in the same amount of revenue brought in this year, next year, right? Which would bump up the rate slightly, likely, or keep it parity. But to issue new bonds would take that rate up if we're gonna keep the M&O revenue the same year to year. I think.
okay, so you're saying you keep O&M the same,
Mhm.
you keep, obviously fire's the same. Now your debt service has gone up, so you want to increase the tax rate.
Well, it'll show as a
Or
tax rate.
whatever
Yeah.
it is, to encompass that if you keep the O&M static.
Yeah, but I'm saying that would show up as a tax rate increase overall net in the notices for sure, but just in reality, we're bringing in additional revenue on the bond. So,
Yes, but you're gonna, depending on where. So this year, if we're looking at, say, the max, just that, we've kept you right under
Mhm.
3.5,
mhm.
3.44. We're assuming that O&M and fire are static, your home value's still static, or it's
Mhm.
gone up?
We
Okay,
keep those static.
okay, so now you're wanting to increase.
The debt to issue the bonds. And that's something that will show up as a tax.
So that's likely going to push you over the 3.5%,
Mhm.
which would then trigger an automatic election for the voters to decide if the district was going to be allowed to do that, because only O&M can change.
Mhm.
Debt service is the first bucket. Fire is close second. So O&M is really the only place where that potential election is going to affect.
And I guess that kind of gets the original, the thing I was really getting back to, big picture is, if we're not in an environment with the growth and the values on the tax side, right, and taxable values,
Mhm.
we can't really issue the bonds until we're in a place we can be sure that the increase in tax rate necessary to cover them, right, won't force us into an election. Does that does that make sense? Like, we gotta make sure that we can't.
I'm not bond counsel by any means, but they're not looking at that.
We're, no,
But I'm saying from our end,
Feasibility
right?
perspective.
They don't care about the feasibility, we have to care about it from our end.
And they're already evaluating that
right, so
outside.
what
of
we're
district.
looking at is if we're going into this under your 3.5%, but not parity, then issuing the bonds next year, the district can still be able to absorb that with the decrease in the O&M without having to, I don't know how to say this, massively dip into reserves. The issue would come if you go so low this year that potentially next year you've put yourselves in the position where an election would have to happen, and then it's either you get the increase essentially for just the O&M because debt service would be done at that point, or you're gonna end up with the voter approval rate.
So I have a comment, and I hear what you're saying, I've done this a lot, and so is Ursula. What is your recommendation?
Our recommendation, looking at the district potentially issuing bonds and looking at budget, we would recommend, strongly recommend going with the higher 611 that you all published, because that makes the least impact to your reserves. In our packet, when you see those numbers, and this isn't even the revised budget that we just did on the screen, but you'll see that
What sheet are you looking at?
it would
The
be
color, okay.
the first lovely one. So if you look at this one, then the district still has essentially, the healthy reserve. So you're keeping about a year. It'll be a little bit less, but it's not a huge impact. Whereas if you look at the parity budget, which is the second one, then what the district is looking at is you're showing, obviously deficit revenue, a deficit budget. But then if you look under the column for 2029, the district has not only used up its reserve, but it is now,
Oh my gosh.
No.
That's a negative.
That's,
You're basically in arrears. Yeah, we go bankrupt.
it's not, that is not a pretty projection.
Okay.
That's
so-
based on a
Now-
lot of ifs.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and
Yeah.
I agree with you, that is a
Yeah.
lot of ifs, that's assuming essentially no growth, no additional value, that assumes a static tax rate, that assumes a conservative 3% increase on cost yearly, which we always try to be conservative.
Sure.
But you are correct, there are some assumptions in there.
So your recommendation is for us to do the 0.611, so we can say a healthier reserve
Healthier reserve,
and not be subject to a voter with the 3.5. Okay.
yes, if that's what y'all are looking.
I do want to add one thing there because I think there's a really negative connotation if you have to have an election. And I don't think that that's necessarily a negative thing, except there will be some expense for that election. But it's not a negative thing to have residents have to vote on their tax rate and increase. So I just want to be careful because I think every time we throw it out there, we'll be forced into an election. Well, I kind of think it may be a positive that we're forced into an election, so.
I think the issue I'm trying to raise is that if you're forced into election, it's best that you're put in a place where whether win or loses, all that is at stake is operating stuff, so we have some ability to move back and forth, right?
Yeah.
But where you're put in that position based because you're trying to cover fixed expenses you've issued new ones of.
Yeah.
And I guess I kind of get where I'm guessing I'm getting is like, you know, honestly, I knew the numbers weren't good. I didn't know they were this not good, when Williamson CAD brought them in. I really didn't, I knew they weren't good. I didn't realize we basically were, all of our meager value growth was off deferred appreciation essentially.
I'd like to point out, there kind of was an election when the bond was on the ballot.
That was just authorized spending, yeah.
But that's also saying they understand that there's gonna be more expenses.
Yep.
And anybody that says, let's spend more money, understands that they need to come up with more money as well. In that, so, I mean, maybe we need to do a follow-up election at some point, but this is the direction that I hear from what we can divine from the tea leaves of, yes, we want better parks. We can do that with the voter, you know, the understanding that voters went that direction in 2020.
So we're kind of, right now, I think, some of us are looking at 0.59 and some of us are looking at 0.611. Is there any reason to even look at 0.60 in the middle?
Six flat? Is that?
I'm just in the
No,
middle.
I'm asking, because I wanna make sure.
Yeah, I'm just, you know, we're basically between 0.59 and 0.61.
Okay, so 60 would give you 27.
I know it's not exactly parity, nor is actually parity right now, because it gives us, it's like $2.35.
Right, now I'm doing my calculation
Yeah.
really quick, so I could then let Taylor do a calculation really quick.
And don't do the calculation if you don't think it makes sense. I'm just, it's just a question because,
I mean, you're gonna go down essentially that penny and change in your O&M.
68,000.
So that adds to
Your
the
deficit.
Which
deficit,
adds to your
the increase
deficit.
in
180.
deficit.
190.
190.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So,
But it also brings it up, or brings it down from the 0.59. The deficit, it lowers it.
And you know,
From parity, yeah.
I
yes,
just
from
wanna say this,
there.
I know that the comment was about the election. You have to be careful because most voters really don't completely understand what they're voting for. And if they think it's voting for lower taxes, then, and they end up, and we can't pay for our general manager, we can't pay for our park improvements, you know, it's gonna be a problem. And they will be looking at all of us, why did you do this? You know, why did you allow this to happen? You're in charge of our taxes. And I just think we need to really seriously look at the overall, and we need to do what's physically responsible. I know it's what we're all trying to do here, but I'm still gonna keep my motion on the table for, to adopt the budget with the,
61.1.
Yeah, 0.611.
And I know as a homeowner who pays the tax, that because of home values, even though your total tax rate has gone down, it does not always show up as a savings. But if you go to that very first page of our packet, y'all will see that since 2019, the district has significantly lowered its overall tax rate every year.
Yep.
So that's really driving, I mean, even this year, that's almost, it's about a 4% decrease. We're just recommending forward thinking with bonds, with next year,
Stay healthy in the budget.
to
I'm gonna
help
push
the
back
budget.
on something real quick, Lauren, and this is a big picture thing from years working in the system is, I will say, talking about lowering the rate, I mean, that's why the legislature kind of root and branch redid the property tax system in 2019, because there was about 2 decades of folks at all levels talking about lowering rates and changing rates, and taxpayers kind of not being able to figure out why their taxes kept going up. There was blame of the appraisal district, as you heard Alvin say today. He's got a statutory, and I'd even argue a constitutional duty, to appraise at market value. And at the end of the day, rate reduction with budget growth is not a tax cut. And I'm not saying we're here to cut taxes today. I think I'm here trying to keep them roughly static. But I do want to push back on discussion about yeah, rate cuts might be beneficial, but given, if your value growth is high and you cut rates by a little, you can crow about rate cuts all you want. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't bring the numbers today. I remember when I was running, even before, I ran some of the numbers on the growth in the M&O budget in this neighborhood. And over the last 10, 15 years, it's been a lot. And it kind of goes back to, I guess, the place where I want fiscal management. We are in a hole. We have a water tank that needs to be replaced.
No.
We didn't bond it, we're paying it, okay, it needs to be worked on. And
At
it's gonna cost
$500,000.
$500,000. And there is no, if we're talking about setting us, and we have 12 months of reserves. However, if we're gonna issue bonds, we can't touch those reserves really for that project. So it's gonna have to come out of operations taxes somewhere. We have a lot of work to be done on the fence. There is no money in the reserves for that. We had a winter storm that we paid for the work out of reserves that had been set aside to replace the fence, even though the voters had voted down the bond for it. So I guess we're talking about fiscal conservatism, fiscal responsibility. Like, we're new here, but I can still see I got dealt something of a bad hand. Because, the M&O revenues have gone up a lot over the years, and we have 12 months reserves, and I get the hurt we're not dipping into the reserves. I don't really like it. I'd like to have a balance that isn't different reserves. But I think the question becomes, and this is not a knock on the bonds, because the voters voted, we want to honor the will of the voters to do that work. Our parks are a key part of our community. But I got back to the question point I was making about the values. If our values remain flat in the projections, and we assume expense growth of 3.5, we're going to likely have to raise taxes 3.5 every year in that kind of a scenario, just to make our budget, right? There's really not any room to then go out and issue bonds, because getting them across the finish line rate rise would be contingent on the voters approving. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. I don't think it's a good place to put the neighborhood. So I guess, the talk about some of this past stuff falls a little bit flat. I think one of the reasons I'm here on the board day is because people there were not entirely pleased with the direction of past decisions. I would like to start off by showing a good faith effort to the neighborhood that, look, we're not gonna take the most we can get for you from one year, at least. We're gonna have to come back and talk about things next year, because yeah, if values are flat next year, we're probably gonna have to go back and ask to increase taxes just to cover the operations budget. There's not gonna be space under the rate for bonds. And that's to avoid dipping, and you might be dipping reserves even to do that. So I guess, and you wanna talk about like, that, it's unprecedented, the value increase. A decline is pretty unprecedented too. I mean, going back to 14, I looked at the year, that stuff Alvin gave. Every year values are up. From 14 to 15, 9.68, then 8.6, 8.7, 6.4, 3.3. They're down by 0.74 in 20. They're up again 12.77 in 21, 22 and 22. And then this year they're at 0.9. And if they're flat or negative next year, we're going to be in a problem.
Even if it were at 0.61.
Correct. And so I'd like to give something back to the voters this year at least, knowing full well we're gonna have to have a further discussion later.
Okay,
But
so do
I've said my piece. I don't mean to belabor the point.
Director Shoemaker, do I have an amendment to the original motion?
I would like to amend Director Roberts' motion to make a motion to adopt at the parity rate of 0.5, sorry, I didn't.
915.
0.5915.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Okay, discussion. Go around the room. Director Johnson.
I'm wondering, how can we get to, like, $2.35 is the minimus amount of money, right? I don't know that.
We're almost at a 0% increase. It's just the way it kind of works out mathematically. It's kind of rare that you would see an actual zero right there. You're usually looking at less than a 1% difference. And I believe that's 0.14.
It's
So,
very
yeah.
small. What would it be at 0.5914? Would that be below zero? That would have to be, right?
Not necessarily, because 5914?
Yeah.
It takes you down to 0.12%, 206.
Interesting. What would it, to play the math game, what would it take to get it to zero? I don't know if there's an equation or if you have to actually keep doing 0.5911, 0.5, 0. Because one of the things that I noted here, just for discussion purposes, so in comparing these two, 2029 actually looks a little better off in the parity rate version. Although granted, the revenue's down by 30,000. Well, so looking just at 2029, the net revenue is less terrible on the 0.5915, right? It's at 1388 instead of 1393. Granted, the general fund balance is more negative, but again, I agree with Director Shoemaker that unless the rates jump up next year, which apparently nobody predicts they will, we're gonna have to talk about that next year, but is that right? Am I reading that right? That the net revenues in 2029 are better in the parity than they are in the,
Not, I see in 29, the negative almost 1.4 million,
right?
which is up from the almost 3 million the year before,
But,
1.2 before that, 1.1,
right, but just looking at 29,
yes.
in the 0.6110 budget, it's even closer to 1.4 million, isn't it?
Are you saying it's worth 1393562
Right,
in that revenues line?
I'm looking right here, Lauren.
Yeah, no, I'm
Okay.
going back and forth between them. So,
Somehow it got, that last year is less
I mean-
revenue loss.
while your overall, if you look down at your general fund balance in 29, it's negative 484
Right.
on
versus
the
five.
maps. In the parity, it's a negative 512.
Oh, agreed, yeah, absolutely.
So, on parity, you're less able to
Yeah.
meet everything, and that's exhausting all of your reserves,
Right,
because you haven't been adding to them.
right. Like you said, making, and I totally understand why you make the assumptions you do, you have to, and it's the best advice that you have. I mean, of course, we wouldn't allow this to happen, but I do understand why the projections look the way they do. Thank you for providing. If you do, do you know what number it would take to get to 0?
If I don't get to 0, I can get you to 89 cents, 0.05. That would be 26.
And so I guess my question, I don't understand the urgency to put it to 0, because it doesn't make any sense. I don't think that the taxpayer's gonna see a 0 increase. There's no way you can guarantee everybody's
No,
values.
because
different.
It's on average.
So I know, so we're sitting
looking
here
only at
debating
averages.
something that really isn't gonna matter to everybody, because not everyone's gonna see a 0 increase.
But
On
on
the
average, people will receive a 2.35, $2,
Barely,
$2.
I mean, we're talking,
On average.
we're talking,
But that's what we look at everything on all these. We
yeah, I know,
look on
and I
average.
don't think the past board did a very poor job. I applaud the board for keeping the district afloat and keeping us at an A+ rating. And I think that's very fiscally responsible.
Okay, so if we're gonna bring up,
No. So
Okay.
I still stand with my motion.
Director Roberts is
My-
speaking.
Thank you. My original motion is that we approve this and do what we need to be doing. And I'm hearing everyone's conversations, but I just think that we need to move this
Okay.
thing forward.
Your motion has been amended and it's been seconded, and that's what's on the table. So is there any more discussion? I'm gonna go
So
around
I'm
the
gonna
table.
amend that second motion to my original motion.
I don't believe you can,
I don't think you can do that.
Withdraw
Think
my
we can-
original motion then.
well, I think we need to dispose of my
I'm
amendment
just gonna
first.
withdraw mine.
Well, we have to dispose of my amendment first, dispose of it, and then
Go ahead, Director Shoemaker.
I was just gonna say, I have no further comment beyond this. I think procedurally, we have to dispose of my amended amendment first,
Okay,
and then we can move on to Director Roberts withdrawing her motion, and we can go from there.
okay, so you've withdrawn your motion, you're getting this for the minutes. You're withdrawing your motion.
I'm unclear, are you withdrawing the one that you just made or your original
The
motion?
original
So I
motion.
think the original motion is gone anyway because David's
Okay.
replaced
All
yours.
right, so,
So there is not a motion on the table.
okay,
There's an amended motion on the
I
table.
was
No,
saying, I
you-
want to withdraw my,
Oh,
since
you're
she wants to
withdrawing
withdraw
yours.
hers, I
Okay,
want,
okay.
because otherwise
Hers
you
was
can't
already
move on in
withdrawn.
further discussion, we can't make a third amendment
Okay,
tonight.
so,
Just okay.
Director Roberts, I think Director Young, you wanted to say something?
I'm gonna hold my tongue for now.
Okay. Do I have a motion on the table for the tax rate?
I'll make my motion for .61, taking unfortunately, the reserve out, the deficit to make a balanced budget out of the reserves and, move forward.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay. Do I have another motion?
I will remake my original motion separately to adopt the parity rate of 0.5915 and leave the floor open for a second or an amendment.
Do I have a second? We have to pass a rate tonight.
Then if I don't have a second, I'll withdraw my motion for now.
Okay,
So
I'm
we've
sorry.
talked about, and then I'm not your math guy here, but, in my calculation, if you were to cut it in half, I think that's 0.60125.
okay, so I'll make a motion for my .60.
I'll second that.
Just 0.60.
You did .6000, right?
Is it add 68,000?
Yeah.
$190,000.
60.
Director Young, second.
Maybe we gotta start looking at some more contracts and reduce budget.
That's definitely something to consider.
2771, which is like equal.
Are we allowed to start
Yeah,
discussing?
198.
Um,
Our deficit, sorry to interrupt, is at 190.
That's right, that was 190.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
which we could use reserves. Which is less than 1 year, I mean, it's the same basic thing. Okay, so we have a second, I'm gonna go around the table once. Let's, I think we all know each other's main points, so please reserve it for new helpful information. I don't know if I have any, so I'm talking to myself. Okay, who would like to speak first? Director Young.
Let me speak for just a moment. First year on this, as is, but some people have more expertise. As a new set of eyes looking at this, I'm looking at, and I'm frustrated with the over-under every time that it goes over-under by more than 10%. Now, the five of us did not set this budget. There were two of you that did and three other people that set this budget. And so how things get spent, it's gonna change naturally. But from this year to next year, it's gonna be the same five people that set the budget are spending the budget. What I'd like to do, first of all, is for us to commit next year on everything that goes over, under by more than 10%. We're gonna go into detail on why we did it. That way, when we get to this meeting next year, we have a better understanding of what we need to do to cut back or to where we spend. I mean, I see one in here that, you know, is budgeted for 300,000 and the over under was 253,000. It's difficult. And that's just the first page, 161.22. It's difficult, even if there's a quick logical explanation, not everybody watching, not every resident is gonna be able to take a look at this and understand what's going on. We should have been able to provide that by the next time we're going through this process. In the lead up meetings, I know we don't even need Sean at some of these, we can just sit around, we can workshop, but when it lasts an hour, and it's obvious we probably should have spent a little bit more time going into detail. on what the last board expected. This time, I think we come back around and we're gonna nail a different budget. We're gonna have a lot less teeth grinding and we can get through this a little bit
Okay,
better. But still for this one, I'm gonna go to what the consensus is
okay.
on the tax rate.
Anything else? That, Director Johnson?
So I think that's a good point, Director, Young. You know, some of that's gonna be explained by storms and other stuff, but I do think it's worthy of looking at. It may even be a good idea to, do a mid-year budget session, like a budget workshop, because I found the last several meetings very useful.
And I'm just not interrupting, but we did go do an amended budget.
We did,
Which is
you're
the first
absolutely
time we've done, and since I've been on the board, so I do think that was helpful.
It was, yes, but the one with the five of us.
Yes,
And the
yes.
workshop, I think would be
Yes.
useful. So my thoughts is the vote comes up, I guess, feel free to shush me somebody if I've said this already, I don't think I have, but, I'm skeptical that a bond's gonna be put up next year. And Williamson County's pushing their tax rate to the max, because I think probably because of the schools having to go down so much. ACC's doing the same thing. If we can give them some relief this year before next year comes where we may not be able to, I'd like to do that.
Okay, are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, Director Roberts?
Yeah, I just want one clarification. So this budget was amended by this board, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're operating off of this board's budget, okay? So I think that we need to keep that in mind, and I still stand on my thing on the 6.61. I think it's fiscally responsible, and I would like the board to consider that.
Okay, Director Shoemaker?
Just to echo what Director Johnson said, I'd like to go to the parity rate because every other entity in the county is gonna take their 3.5 to their 8, whatever they can get, because the state reduced school rates, increased the school homestead exemption, and I'd like to let the taxpayers have some of that back, because even years this neighborhood has opted something close to parity rate, it's still worked out to be a slight increase, and I think there's just not many chances for that, and I think given we got to Williams and Cadden, I don't think we're gonna get a chance to do this again next year. And I think this is kind of our one shot to actually tell the taxpayers for once, like, hey, our part of your bill didn't go up really.
Okay, so, what I'm gonna say is, as a homeowner, we're all homeowners, I'm feeling the pain of the taxes, and I truly understand where people can get taxed out of their homes, and I am very concerned for some of our residents, and I think we need to do everything we possibly can do. I'm also concerned that we have a budget that we can maintain this district. I think we have failed in the past on maintenance and operations. I think there are some things we should have, spent money on in the past that we didn't. And, I've been a member of that board for several years and, one voice and, so, you can point the finger at me being on that board. You just said that you want to do parity, so do you have an amendment to my motion?
Actually, says David, can I ask you a question? Lauren, did you ever get what Director Johnson was asking for? He asked for 0, what was your?
Yes. And
I never heard the answer to the question, what was the answer to it?
I believe it was 59.10.
59.10 is 80 cents.
Hold on, sorry, wrong one.
So I just want to, if we're going in for this, might as well just like get it to 0, right? Like if we're gonna do this, since you worked it out.
89 cents,
But I want to.
59 cents, 59.00.
yes. That's as close to 0 as I can get, is
0.5900.
No.
0.5910.
10, okay.
Sorry.
Oh,
We need a second.
We don't have.
I have a motion, because I want to make, before I make my motion, I want to make sure I got the right answer from Lauren.
I'd like to understand why we can't get to 0.
Because you'll go past 0, right?
Yes, she'll go past 0.
What's the under?
Oh, because we can't do more than 1,000 for the penny? Right. And the tax rate?
What would be 0.5909?
It would be a negative 58 cents.
The average home would go down 58 cents? I mean,
And what was that number, Lauren? You said it was 5909? You said 5909?
5905.
05.
5905 is the negative 58 cents. Negative 0.03%.
Okay, then I'll make the motion to amend to adopt the tax rate of 59.05.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we're gonna go around the room one more time. I'll start this time, and there are still areas that this budget can be cut back. And I'm gonna say, we could have fewer special meetings, we cannot have paper copies. I mean, there are things that, I know we like some things, and there's probably some things I like, but like, we can zero out seminar. There are some things that we really, for 1 year, just like your home budget, you know, we're not gonna go on vacation this summer, we're gonna spend money in different places, not spend money in some other areas. So I want you all to think about that. There are still places that we can cut. Director Young.
So we're proposing a cut on the same year that we're proposing exercising a bond that was voted for.
Not
in
necessarily.
2020.
I don't think any of us
So,
have decided to
okay.
do that.
So my thought there is, if we're going that direction, as you've proposed, Director Shoemaker, I think we also need to be prepared to go in the direction of not exercising the bond. If we're going to be saving money for the households, that's the direction we need to go. I believe that it was voted for, park improvements, different things like that, and along with that, I believe comes an understanding that there was going to be some more taxes. Now, that doesn't mean we just get to spend it all crazy or anything like that. I would like to make sure that we're getting all the maintenance done if we do the bond, which I am in favor of, but I want to, whatever maintenance and upgrades that hasn't seen in long enough that it needs it, we cover that first, but then we also can come back in a year and we have a much better understanding in the overs and the unders. I'm fine going with the 611, with the understanding that we're gonna be exercising the bond, but if we do go less, then I think we need to be cutting back on the bond as well.
Okay, the motion is 0.5905 right now.
Right, but I can
Okay.
still say that I would be in favor of the other one.
Yeah, so you did, okay. Director Johnson.
What would the number be on that one?
Deficit?
Yeah.
250,000.
250. So,
53,851.
can we see, I think it's the bottom of that, Lisa?
This isn't.
Yeah, that, right, a little bit lower if you wouldn't mind. 250, what was that?
253,851.
53,851. So it's an increase of 5 and change. Yeah, 6 and change. Okay. That's all I had, Dr. Owens.
I still stand at, physically, I think we should do, what I had recommended.
0.6111. Okay.
Yeah, because I think what we need to realize is that we already zeroed out some things. I mean, we increased our general manager contract by $111,000. This isn't about Ms. Torres, this is about the contract which I didn't approve of. And so that's $111,000 that we probably could have operated on less. I think we could have done something a little bit differently. But I also think there's a lot of pool maintenance and things that are going to suffer if we do this. And I think it's just, I personally don't think it's a very good fiscal decision to go with the other.
Director Shoemaker.
I think I've said most everything I could say. I just want to echo what you said, Director Logan, that I do think we should definitely keep an eye on this budget going forward, make motions. Again, I was serious about, like, you know, it's a little bit of money, like, you know, having Denise tell us like what we can do to cut down on, you know, I don't need these for special meetings, right? I don't need them to come. If Sean, you know, yes, I would like to have one for the regular ones, but again, like, that's something we can work on to get that cost down, you know? And there's other places you can hold the cost. And I'll say something else too, is, you know, we're still gonna have, and even with this deficit at 250, we're still gonna have over a year's worth of reserves. And I guess to build something Robert said, you know, we don't know if we'll have another storm or something will go wrong with one of the pools. If something like that happens, even if we adopted the 6.11, if we could dip in the reserves to deal with one of those issues, we'd be out of luck on the bonds anyway. So that's the thing, is like, you know, we don't know because of where we are currently with reserves being at a year only, we just don't have much leeway, and so anyway, I've said plenty, I don't want to belabor any points.
Yeah. I'm gonna say one final word, and that is, I think we have suffered on maintenance, and I think part of that is because we didn't have a full-time GM. And I think that, we are actually doing a service to our community by having a full-time GM. We are gonna get a lot more done here. Okay,
Well,
so,
I think the
go ahead.
full-time GM, I'm sorry, I think the full-time GM is important. I think the expense that we're paying is exorbitant.
Okay, Dr. Andrew.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
So, just to clarify for the people watching, unlike like a state agency or some local governments, we're free to change this budget at any time, right?
Yeah.
To amend it.
To amend it,
Remember,
right.
we've already amended it. The one you're working off of is
Yep.
amended by this.
Right,
Yeah.
so we can, so, you know, if we learn more, and we will, as we go forward, we can
yeah,
adjust as needed. and move,
absolutely,
so.
absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and call for a vote.
Can
I'll-
I
sure, Sean.
seek a little bit of clarity here?
Oh,
So
sure, sorry.
the motion is for 0.5905.
Correct.
And so Lauren and Taylor, that's for 0.2676 is the O and M? Thanks.
Okay, so, do I have to do anything, we're gonna record the vote on the 2023 tax rate and order levying taxes. All in favor of the motion on the table, which is a tax rate of 0.5905, which on average will, what was it, 58?
58 cents.
Will be a negative 58 cents that the average homeowner will see increase, negative increase. Their
Decrease.
tax- Decrease on their tax liability.
And what's the negative, total for the deficit on the?
We said 253.
Negative 253,
Yeah.
$253,000, and what was it?
Yeah, negative 253, 851.
851.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Rob, Dr. Young, did you aye?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I was waiting for the chance to know.
Okay.
Same here, I vote no.
All opposed?
Aye.
No.
No,
Anybody abstaining? Okay,
but I do want to say that I think this is a very against our financial advisors' advice, and this is why my vote is no. I
Okay.
think we hired them to give us expertise advice, and we're not listening to
Well,
it.
I'll take a minute to say something. You know, Lauren and Taylor have done a good job advising us.
So we
And
also do need to
listen.
adopt the budget.
okay.
So no,
Okay,
no, just real quick, I want to say something
Yeah,
about that,
let's
about the
let
whole,
Dr. Shoemaker have
the not listening part. And this comes from, you know, years of sitting in seats kind of like y'all's in different situations. You know, I appreciate the work y'all do, because I've worked for elected officials for most of my career, advising about things of all sorts. And you do your best to advise them, and it's a lot of work. And it takes a lot of your time and put a lot of effort into it. They don't always listen to you. But I guess what I'm sure you aware, because that's how all the bosses I've ever had ever made aware, is that even if they disagree with you and choose to follow a different policy, they're the policymakers. But that I, like a lot of the bosses I've had, worked for 2 different governors, 2 different state senators, and now state comptroller. I on this board appreciate y'all's work and what you put in. I may not always follow your recommendations, I might disagree with them, but that in no way, shape, or form you should ever take that I disrespected the work you've done or think you've done a poor job. You've done an excellent job. It's at the end of the day, we're the ones who are elected. It is, the buck stops with us. If people don't like what I've done, ultimately, they'll get a chance in 4 years to throw me out. So I just want to take that moment to thank you for the work you've done, and I appreciate you bearing with all of my questions and all of our work. Thank y'all.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Shoemaker, I really
I
appreciate
second
that.
that.
And
I'd like
I
to second that.
second that as well.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, Sean?
So now, board members, we need to go back to item number 5. The resolution adopting budget is just the method by which you adopt the budget, and we will reflect the budget in 0.2676 operate.
Okay, do I have a motion to adopt the budget?
Motion.
Second.
All, discussion? Okay, all in
This
fa-
is just the budget.
correct, correct. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay.
Motion to
Amended and restated information form,
Motion to approve it.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Future board meetings, I believe our next board meeting is the regular board meeting. Please get any agenda items over to the GM in a timely manner. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.